I have something to confess. Despite being a very big anime fan, this is my first time playing a visual novel. Now, I know what you're thinking. How come someone as cultured as me has not played a visual novel before? Well, the answer to that question is pretty simple. Yeah. Anyways, today I'm here to tell you my experience on this amazing series called Danganronpa. Without spoiling too much, it's a game about high school students trapped in a school with an evil mascot who's behind it all, and if these students want to get out, they have to kill each other. There are a lot of unique situations and plot twists in this game, so stay tuned for that. Alright, before I go on, if you are currently playing this game or planning to play this game, I recommend you to click away because there are spoilers ahead, obviously. We are first greeted with someone narrating a certain popular school in an urban area called Hope's Peak Academy. It's a prestigious school that brings in top students from every field imaginable. Not just anyone could enroll into this school. You have to be scouted in order to enroll here because this school consists of very unique students called Ultimates. Now, Ultimate students are people who are extremely talented in their field. For example, there's a student who's an ultimate pop sensation and there's another student who's an ultimate baseball star. Now, you might be wondering, what's the ultimate ability of our protagonist right here? Well, he's just your average high school student. How original. The reason why he's accepted into this prestigious school is because they held a lottery. And from sheer luck, Naegi won the lottery and was dubbed as the ultimate lucky student. Quite the talent you got there, if you ask me. As Naegi stepped inside the school, his vision suddenly got blurry and everything around him started spinning until he finally passed out. Huh, must have been the gamer pills he took last night. Upon waking up, Naegi was mysteriously transported into a strange classroom. As he looked around, the windows are bordered up with metal plates. There's a random security camera and television in the middle of the classroom, and in front of him, he's greeted with a strange-looking pamphlet. As Naegi left the classroom, he is then greeted by the school's hallway. There were a lot of locked up and boarded up doors. The second floor of the building is strangely blocked as well. I kept exploring the area for a bit until I've stumbled upon the main hall. Upon entering the main hall, I was greeted with a bunch of people. As Naegi introduced himself and explained the situation, a couple of them replied to Naegi saying they've experienced the same thing as well. But before things escalated, one of his classmates stepped in to calm down the situation and suggested to do an introduction with each other. But before I did that, I took a look at my surroundings. The first thing that I took note of is the machine gun attached to the ceiling. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's normal. Then I took a look at the metal hatch, which Naegi thinks was the entrance to the main hall. And this metal mailbox right here, it's just a normal mailbox. Anyways, I then introduced myself to each of my classmates. First up is Kyoktaka Ishimaru. He's an ultimate moral compass. Yeah, I still have no idea what that is. He's an honor student throughout his life and he's been pretty strict with rules and such. Think of him as like the annoying student council president that keeps nagging at you for every little rule that you break. Next we have Fukawatoko. She's the ultimate writing prodigy. She looks pretty shy and timid at first glance, but there are times where she shows her
inferiority.
Next up is Sayaka Maizono. She's the ultimate pop sensation. She's your everyday idol who's in a famous pop group across the country. And since like Makoto knows a thing or two about her, go get him, Tiger. Next up is Leon Kawata. He's an ultimate baseball star. He was a cleanup hitter for the National High School Championship. He claims that he doesn't like baseball and hasn't practiced in a while. As soon as he enrolled to this school, he dropped baseball and started to chase his dream of being a musician. Reminds me a bit of Metro Man. Don't let your dreams be dreams, kids.
Just do it!
Next up is Hifumi Yamada. He's the ultimate fanfic creator. Must be a My Hero fan. I see, you're a man of culture as well. Next up we have Aoi Asahina. She's the ultimate swimming pro. She's been breaking records left and right ever since elementary school. She's an easygoing person who's bursting with energy. She may not look the brightest, but she's an alright person. Next up is Chihiro Fujisaki. Oh good, she's not a trap, just making sure it's all. She's known as the ultimate programmer. She looks pretty timid but also gives an aura of I'm trying my best, which looks pretty cute, so gold sticker from me. Next up on the list is... white hair? Check. Monotone voice? Check. Unique colored eyes? Check. Kudera vibes? Check. Alright, we got ourselves the best girl of the series. And if you tell me otherwise, then your opinion is wrong. And mine is objectively right. She gives off this stoic and mysterious vibe. We have no idea what her ultimate ability is. Whenever we try to ask her, she just brushes things off and remains cold towards Naegi. Well, if I have to guess, she's obviously the ultimate waifu. Next, we have Enoshima Junko. She's the ultimate fashionista. She's a gyaru who looks pretty easygoing as well. Naegi looks a bit surprised that they look pretty different IRL compared to the magazine shots he's seen. She claims that these magazine shots were edited using Photoshop, so it looks pretty different than usual. Next up is Odamondo. He's the ultimate biker leader gang. Mondo is the current leader of the largest biker gang in Japan. He's got a pretty intimidating vibe going, and doesn't look interested with the introduction. Also, his hair looks like a corn, which is making me kinda hungry. Thanks for the confirmation, Naegi. She competed in a lot of martial arts tournaments in America and has won over 400 matches without losing a single match. She's also got this really intimidating aura but seems rather approachable compared to Mondo. Next we have Togami Byakuya. He's known as the ultimate affluent progeny. I'll let Naegi take this. Very based. Next up we have Yasuhiro Hagakure. He's the ultimate clairvoyant. He's well known among physics as the supernova. He's a pretty weird and dumb guy, but he looks likable, so you also get a gold sticker from me. Last but not least, we have Celestia Ludenberg. She's known for being the ultimate gambler. She must be a gacha player then. She seems polite at first glance, but I can't help but wonder if that's just a mask to cover up her true persona. Even Naegi feels the same. Celeste has never lost a bet in her life. She won an underground gambling tournament, earning herself a ton of money from her opponents. From there, she earned the title Queen of Liars. She seems pretty sus, but I gotta admit, her design is great. She gets an A in my waifu tier list. We then picked up where we left off as the introduction ended. Everyone in the main hall experienced the same thing. They lost consciousness as they stepped into the main hall and fell asleep. Everyone's personal belongings went missing as well. Junko then mentioned about the possibility of being kidnapped, but was quickly defused by Yasuhiro, who thinks this is probably how the school does orientation procedures. The tension in the room quickly evaporates when suddenly television turned itself on and a mysterious figure suddenly emerged from it. It then started talking, asking if anyone could hear it. The voice seemed out of place. It sounded so playful and yet so dreadful at the same time. It then announced to all incoming students to make their way towards the gymnasium. As the video ended, some of the tension from earlier started to creep its way back. Some of the students brushed it off and went straight to the gymnasium. Sayaka, Junko, and Naegi found it to be unnerving. Kyoko and Sakura were on the same page but suggested to move forward in order to find out what's going on. As Naegi heads to the gym, everything looked pretty normal. The gymnasium looked like your typical entrance ceremony. But suddenly, out of nowhere, a voice could be heard from the main stage. A teddy bear popped out of nowhere, and everyone got startled at the sight of it. The teddy bear then introduced himself as Monokuma, and he claims to be the school's headmaster. Naigi's unnerving fear came back crawling as he started to question everything that's happened up to this point. Monokuma proceeded with the ceremony and then talks about what our school life here will be like. He claims that the 15 students present are full of potential and represents the hope of the world. And to protect that hope, each of us will all live a communal life together within the confines of the school until the day we die. Everyone was in complete shock of such claims and started to question Monokuma. Monokuma then claims that the students were completely cut off with the outside world. Some of the students like Leon and Mondo brush these off as some sort of a lie or a joke. Monokuma retorts back by saying we will soon learn the harsh truth of this reality. Monokuma then forgets to mention that there is only one way to leave the building. There's a special clause called graduation clause for students who would like to leave. He then backtracks to the communal lifestyle where students must live in harmony with each other. But if someone were to disrupt that harmony, they alone would be allowed to leave the school. Byakuya then asks this. You have to kill someone if you want to leave. Everyone freaked out as soon as they heard it. The tension in the room went off the rails, but suddenly, Mondo got tired of all of this and confronted with Monokuma face to face. Mondo's furious emotions nearly cost him his life. Monokuma blew up with little to no warning, and out of thin air, another Monokuma popped up. He then forced authority within the room. Monokuma let Mondo off the hook with a warning as violence against the headmaster is strictly prohibited, and if someone were to break this rule again, they aren't going to be walking away scot-free. Before panic started to kick in, Monokuma handed out a digital student handbook to everyone. He explains to everyone to take care of this handbook as it is vital to their healthy school life. He then claims that the handbook is indestructible. It's waterproof and can withstand a force up to 10 tons. The student handbook also consists of the school regulation. Monokuma emphasizes not to break any of the rules because violation of such will not be tolerated. He then closes out the ceremony abruptly by disappearing into thin air. As Monokuma left, the students were left in a state of shock. Everyone starts to panic and question what they've just heard and witnessed. Kyoko tried to calm the situation down, but to no avail. As everyone started to question reality, Byakuya took hold of the situation and said the following. And with that, we have concluded the prologue of the game. Picking up where we left off, the group decided to find a way out of school. Chihiro suggested to take a look at the rules, otherwise someone might get punished for it. With that said, here are the following rules. Rule number 1. Students may reside only within the school. Rule number 2. Nighttime is from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Some areas are off limits at night. Rule number 3. Sleeping anywhere other than the dormitory will be seen as sleeping in class and be punished accordingly. Rule number 4. With minimal restrictions, you are free to explore Hope's Peak Academy at your discretion. Rule number 5. Violence against Headmaster Monokuma is strictly prohibited, as is destruction of surveillance cameras. Rule number 6. Anyone who kills a fellow student and becomes a blackened will graduate, unless they are discovered. And finally, rule number 7. Additional school regulations may be added as necessary. After reading the rules, we are then greeted with the school's dormitory. I briefly investigated my room for some useful things. The important stuff to take note of are the following: a notepad, a brand new toolkit found in a drawer, a lint roller, and a dorm key. As I further investigated the area, I went to check the bathroom, and it's locked. How convenient. I then went outside to check on the others, and as I walked out of my room, "Are you alright, my lady?" Sayaka and I went straight to the dining hall where everyone is gathered. Psych, it's just the two of us here.
Yeah, boy.
Sayaka and I picked up where we left off during our introduction from earlier. She asked Naegi if he ever went to a school called Blackroot Junior High. Naegi confirms this to be the case, and it seems like both Sayaka and Naegi have attended the same school back then. Good for you, bud. The others shortly arrived at the main hall and discussed everything that they've found from exploring the building. Junko and Chihiro confirmed the rooms to be soundproof. No matter how loud a person screams, the others will not be able to hear you at all. They've also confirmed that the girls' bathrooms had locks on it. Wait a minute, does that mean Naegi is a...
No.
The conversation went on for a while up until Kyoko entered the dining hall and showed to the whole group a map of Hope Peak Academy. Everyone was in disbelief. If they are in Hope's Peak Academy, then why are they being treated like this? Why are they in this predicament? Why aren't there any other students? Why are they trapped in it? These questions keep popping out from the group, but unfortunately for them, no one has the answers for it. After a series of questions and stress coming out of some people, they came to accept into living here for now. Celeste then made a suggestion in regards to rule number 2. She suggested that the group should be prohibited to go out during nighttime. This is a brilliant idea since we're limiting the activity during nighttime while also using it as a preventive measure. After hearing her suggestion, everyone agreed to the idea and prohibited going outside during nighttime altogether. Nighttime was upon them, so the group then went on to their separate ways in the dormitory. Before going to bed, Naegi checks his bathroom again to see if it's locked. From what he's learned, only the girls' bathroom has a lock on it. Naegi then reached out through the door and, yep, still locked. Oh hey look, it's Monokuma. It turns out Naigi's door is a bit jammed and Monokuma taught him how to properly open his bathroom door. All Naegi has to do is turn the doorknob and then lift it as he pulls. Monokuma then proceeds to mock Naegi with his door problem despite being the ultimate lucky student. And afterwards, Monokuma left without a trace. Right as he disappeared, a bell could be heard from the distance, then an announcement was made through the television. It is now officially nighttime. Everyone promised to each other not to leave their rooms at this time. Naegi, after having a long day, collapsed into the bed exhausted. He instantly closed his eyes and hoped that everything he experienced so far was just a wild dream. Spoiler alert, it's not a dream. And with that, this is how the curtain closed on our first night. Naegi woke up to his second day at this school. I went outside and further explored the building. I first went to the garbage area and surprisingly, it was locked for some reason. There's nothing else in this area, so I decided to move on. I then went straight into the kitchen and saw the surplus amounts of food stocked in there. I also found a set of kitchen knives which looks pretty dangerous, especially in this situation. After exploring the dormitory, I headed straight into Sayaka's room. She needed help to find something for self-defense, which is understandable and good thinking on her part. So I agreed to help and accompanied her to the gym. We found some strange items in the trophy cases like plaques and statues. We then came across a replica of a golden samurai sword. Upon barely touching it, Naigi's hand was covered in gold paint. Sayaka finds the item too strange to use for a self-defense weapon. She then recommends Naegi to take it with him to liven up his room a little bit. Naegi then made some moves on Sayaka, saying that he'll protect her. She's surprised upon hearing this and gets a bit flustered. Way to go, man. Before heading back, Sayaka and I had a conversation about dreams. Sayaka's dream is to be an idol who can bring people to smile. She then explained that she did everything to make her dream a reality. That's kind of sus there, Sayaka. She then vents her worries about the outside world. As long as she's trapped in here, the world and her group is slowly going to forget about her. And if that happens, the dream that she worked so hard for would have been for nothing. Time has passed and Naegi returns to his room for a breather. An alarm played throughout the dormitory and Monokuma once again announced that it was nighttime. Naegi laid on his bed and stared blankly into the ceiling, and eventually falling asleep. A new day is upon us, and the first thing that I was greeted with is a doorbell on my room. Could it be my popular phase has begun? As I gently opened the door, Kyoktaka Ishimaru barged into my room. Taka wants to make it a habit where everyone gathers at the dining area to eat breakfast together. After declaring such things, he bolted out of Naigi's room to gather the others. I then made my way towards the dining hall where everyone is gathered. After eating breakfast with everyone, a concerned Asahina hopes for help to arrive since they've been stuck in the school for a couple of days now. Monokuma suddenly barges in out of nowhere and laughs at the group, hoping for help or police to arrive. He then reminded everyone about the graduation clause if they ever want to leave this place. Monokuma vents out his boredom since nobody has made a move yet. He then thought of a brilliant idea, a motive, a possible motive to help drive the students bathe into bloodbath. He then tells the group to watch a special video that he's just prepared. In order to watch the video, we must head into the AV room in order to play it. Kyoko then cuts him off and asks what he wants from us. Monokuma immediately replied and said,
哲夫、それだけだよ。
I guess you could say, he could only bear a few words. Mondo then kindly ordered Naigi to go and check out the video. Sayaka accompanied me, stating that it's not safe to roam around this place alone. So both Sayaka and I headed towards the AV room. Upon entering the AV room, there's a box filled with DVDs with everyone's name on it. Sayaka then dashed off the room to tell everyone about it. After being left alone for a while, Naigi then reached out to his own DVD and played it onto a device. Naigi's greeted with his family, congratulating him on entering Hope's Peak Academy. It was a dream come true for both Naigi and his parents. Naigi was touched by this and appreciated hearing the support of his family. But, unfortunately, things suddenly went dark. What was once a bright atmosphere full of smiles turned into utter despair. A voice suddenly spoke as Naigi was speechless at the sight of shock and despair. It was Monokuma's dreadful voice. He basically mocked and questions the fate of Naigi's family and their well-being. The video suddenly ends with a title saying, "Look for the answers after graduation." As the video ended, Naigi was full of questions and anger. The only thought on his mind at this moment is that he needs to get out of here. As Naigi was shouting to himself to get out of this place, the other students arrived. They also reached out to their own DVDs to find out what's going on, and sure enough, they too were full of unexplainable emotions. Naigi noticed Sayaka at a distance. She looked pale and her body language expressed fear. As Naigi tried to tap her shoulders to snap her back to reality, she bolted straight out of the room. Naigi then chased after her and searched for her in the hallway. I looked for her everywhere but came with no dice, until I eventually stumbled upon her in Class 1A. As I entered the classroom, she was all there, sitting alone, cowering in fear. Sayaka then expressed her feelings to Naigi. She questioned everything and asked, why is he trapped in here? Sayaka then lashed out her anger around her and Naigi tried to calm her down by grabbing onto her shoulders. Naigi then expressed that she should remain calm and think rationally because this is exactly what Monokuma wants, to give in to the desire of getting out. He then reassures Sayaka that we should work together into getting out and hope that help is going to arrive. Out of nowhere, Sayaka clings into Naigi. Whoa, slow down, Tiger. She continues to vent her bottled up emotions. She cried as she continued to vent out on Naigi's chest. After that sudden turn of events, Sayaka came to her senses and calmed down. Oh hey look, it's Monokuma. Filled with anger, Naigi bottled up his fist and took a swing at Monokuma with all his might. But Naigi's attack missed. On the bright side, he was lucky that Monokuma avoided his lame punch, because if he did hit Monokuma, he probably would have died right then and there. Monokuma then proceeds to mock Naigi for his poor attempt of a punch, and afterwards swiftly disappeared in thin air. Naigi then proceeds to make his way to his own room. He tried to recollect his thoughts, but he suddenly heard the doorbell in his room. As he got up and wondered who could it be at the middle of the night, Sayaka walked up to his room. Wait a sec, did I really miss a page here? He asked Sayaka about what's up and noticed that her body was trembling. She claims that someone has been trying to barge in and force their way into her room. Sayaka went to Naigi to address this problem. Concerned about the situation, Naigi insisted for her to stay in his room. Whoa there, aiming for the home run, huh? Naigi then quickly took back what he said and Sayaka mentioned about switching rooms for tonight. Naigi was surprised to hear it at first but quickly agreed to the idea to make sure that Sayaka is safe. The two of them switched keys and as soon as Naigi tried to leave his room, he was then reminded about the door to his bathroom. He then explained to Sayaka as to how his bathroom door opens and Sayaka seems to get the gist of it. Sayaka gave Naigi one last parting smile as he heads off to Sayaka's room. Upon entering Sayaka's room, I investigated the room for a bit. No, not that way, you got it wrong. I took a look at her cabinet. And as expected, the girls get sewing kit with a map of a human's vitals. I then took a look at her garbage can where I can find the DVD that Monokuma gave us. After briefly investigating the area, I then went to sleep in Sayaka's bed. I woke up at the sound of Monokuma's morning announcement and headed straight towards the dining hall. The atmosphere was starting to get pretty normal at this point. I was then greeted with a bunch of good mornings with my classmates. Taka then noticed that the head count was missing. A wave of emotions and dread suddenly crept up to Nagi's mind. He then immediately bolted out of the dining hall and went straight to his own room. As I entered my own room, it was a mess. It looked like as if a fight broke out. Without hesitation, I quickly investigated the area. There were scratches on the walls and also on the floor. The golden replica sword was unsheathed, the lint roller, and the dorm keys. But after investigating everything around me, my eyes then got fixated at the bathroom door. It's open. Dread started slithering around Nagi like a snake strangling its prey. After gathering enough courage, I then gently walked through the door and saw this. Honestly, when I saw this for the first time, I was really shocked. I didn't really expect Sayaka to be the first one to die. I got pretty fond of Sayaka's character. I find her to be pretty sweet and thoughtful at times. I mean, sure, she kind of has a suspicious side, but I did like her character and the brief time I spent with her. When he woke up, Nagi finds himself in the gymnasium where everyone else is gathered. He is shocked at the confirmation from Byakuya that Sayaka is indeed dead. Nagi is then furious and then claims that Monokuma killed her. Monokuma then came out and said that one of us killed Sayaka. The group was once again snapped back into reality. As Nagi looked around, everyone looked at each other with a combination of fear, suspicion, and confusion. Monokuma then announced that a special class trial would take place. A class trial is where everyone gathers together in a courtroom. During the trial, we will have to present arguments and determine who the blackened is. Through a majority vote, if we determine as to who the blackened is, the blackened will get punished. But if we get it wrong, everyone but the blackened will be punished and the blackened person gets to graduate or get out of this place scot-free. A fight broke out between Junko and Monokuma. Junko is being adamant about not attending the class trial. Monokuma insists in doing so and tries to provoke Junko about it.
Oh no! Anyway.
Everyone panicked at the sudden death of Enoshima Junko. Monokuma isn't messing around. He made an example out of Junko to strictly obey school regulations. While the group is still shocked at the sight of another dead body, Monokuma then handed out a file containing some of the details of Sayaka's murder. Monokuma left the premise with Junko's body laying there. Kyoko took control of the atmosphere. She suggested to cooperate with one another to find out Sayaka's murder, because if they didn't find out as to who did it, well, this happens. Finally, we've arrived at the investigation phase, one of my favorite parts in my Danganronpa playthrough. I love trying to look for clues and piece them together to find out who did it. Sometimes the clues make the case more confusing. There are times where some clues are so deep that you just find more questions than answers. There are other times where a single clue reveals the culprit entirely. Also, the music behind it is such a banger. Take a listen to it. The first clue we have is in our hands, the Monokuma file. Sayaka's death in the bathroom is estimated to be around 1:30 a.m. Her body was in Makoto's dormitory room. The cause of death was a stab in the abdomen, and she shows signs of injuries in her right wrist. Specifically, her right wrist suffered a fracture. I then made my way towards my room where the murder took place. The first thing I investigated is the scratches on the floor. It looks like there was a struggle between Sayaka and her killer. The scratches on the floor was also caused by a sharp object. I took a look at the golden replica sword and it seems to be unsheathed. Sayaka may have used this for self-defense. The killer could have used this as well to wear Sayaka down. There also seems to be some scratches on the sheath that was caused by something sharp. Next up is the lint roller that everyone is provided with. Upon first glance, it looks way less than before. Did Sayaka thought my room was dirty and cleaned it up herself? Maybe. I then took a look at the drawer and surprisingly, everything was still there. Nobody used the toolkit. Mondo then came toward me and said no one in the group has used their toolkit yet. I then drawed my attention towards Kyoko, who's busy investigating the place. Meanwhile, I'm busy getting drawn to something else. Anyways, she asked Naigi if he was a clean freak. Naigi denied it, and Kyoko said that his room looked very unusual. She claims that she couldn't find a single hair in Naigi's room. Upon hearing this, Naigi told her that the lint roller was used even though he never touched it in the first place. He then questioned to himself if Sayaka used it or did the killer use it. We then move on to the final place of the crime scene, the bathroom. Seeing Sayaka in this state made me feel kinda bad for her. Despite being a well-known idol, she's also just a regular high school student. She enjoys being an idol and making people bring a smile to their faces. Now her lifeless body just lies there. Anyways, I first took a look at her wrist. The file said that she suffered a fracture wound on her right hand. Upon inspection, a sharp object is thrust into her stomach, which seems to be the killing blow. There seems to be a gold stain on her right hand and blood on her left hand index finger. Next, I inspected the shower head and I was reminded that the shower gets turned off during nighttime. I then took a look at the strange markings behind Sayaka. Written in blood were the numbers 11037. As I left the area, Kyoko was there outside the door waiting for me. She was also curious about the bloody markings on the wall. She assumes that it was Sayaka's dying message. She also states that the way she wrote the numbers seems like she wanted to block it or hide it using her body. Kyoko then turned her attention towards the doorknob. Some of the screws were loose. Naigi then informed her that the door would sometimes get stuck and only he and Sayaka knew about it. I then made my way towards the trash room. I asked Hifumi to accompany me since he is assigned on this week's trash room. The evidences in the room were a burnt piece of cloth near the incinerator with bloodstains on it, broken shards of glass which resembles a crystal ball, and finally, the incinerator itself is turned on, which is weird considering Hifumi claims to have seen it turned off the last time he was here. I then walked up to Yasuhiro asking about the shattered glass in the trash room. He claims that it's his crystal ball that he uses for, clairvoyance?
Ya, kelas lain man.
僕も待ち疲れたんで、そろそろ始めちゃいますか。
The televisions all across the school went live, and from it, Monokuma announces that the investigation phase is over. He asked everyone to make their way towards the room with a big red door on it, where everyone's fate will be decided. And with that, the class trial begins. The case started off with a classic non-stop debate. The objective of this game is to spot out the lies and contradictions within the yellow text. If the yellow text is a contradiction, we shoot it down and the game will progress. The debate started off with Chihiro saying that Sayaka got surprise attacked and didn't have the chance to struggle, which is clearly wrong since there is a lot of evidence, so we shut it down. Next is the subject of the murder weapon. I wonder what it is. We shot down Mondo's claim of some random knife. When I investigated the kitchen room, there was a missing knife from the kitchen knife set. I asked Asahina if she noticed someone grabbing the knife, but she claims that the knife went missing when she finished her cup of tea. Two people from the group started accusing Naigi, claiming that he committed the crime himself since it took place in his room. Kyoko took a hold of the situation, saying that they should hold their accusations after debating, and thus another debate starts. It starts off with Fukawa claiming that I took the knife in secret, which is wrong since I have Asahina's account as an alibi. She then backed us up by saying Naigi never went into the dining hall in the first place. Fukawa counters by asking what if Asahina and I are working together, which sparks an interesting answer from Monokuma stating each murder is allowed to have an accomplice, but the only one who does the killing will get to graduate. Naigi cleared his own name and got out of suspicion for now. The group quickly shifted their focus towards Asahina since she said she was in the dining hall. Sakura stepped up and claims to have accompanied Asahina this entire time. Out of nowhere, Asahina told the group that there is one other person who went to the dining hall, and that person is Sayaka. Sayaka came into the dining hall and wound up dead a few hours later. The group then hastily formed the conclusion that Sayaka herself took the knife. Naigi tried to defend the already deceased Sayaka, claiming that it was probably for self-defense. Kyoko then abruptly brought up the little mystery surrounding Naigi's room. We then head to another minigame called Hangman's Gambit. Basically, it's just a bunch of letters that I have to shoot down to form a word. We arrived at the conclusion that Kyoko is talking about the absence of hair in Naigi's room. With this in mind, Naigi further proved his innocence to the group. The reason why there were no traces of hair in his room is because the killer had to get rid of any traces they left behind. Another non-stop debate took place in regards to the bathroom door frame. We know that our bathroom is very unique, since Monokuma himself taught us how to properly open it. We shut down Leon's statement of Sayaka's door being locked. We then reminded everyone that only the women's bathroom door had a lock on it. Celeste asked as to why did the killer think the door was locked in the first place. Naigi answered that the killer doesn't realize that it was his own room. The killer also doesn't realize that both Naigi and Sayaka switched rooms. Asahina then asked a question as to how the killer got into Naigi's room and not Sayaka's room. Celeste claimed that it took place at the room Naigi was staying in. We shut it down and Naigi stated that both his and Sayaka's nameplates got switched. As a result of this, the nameplate on Sayaka's room actually had Makoto's name and the nameplate on Makoto's room had Sayaka's. Kyoko then asks Naigi if he switched the nameplates. Naigi denied it and concluded that Sayaka switched the nameplates. Kyoko then pulled a note out of nowhere with Sayaka's writing and signature on it. The note specifically tells the reader to check the nameplates. Hina then asks as to why would she invite someone into her room. Kyoko states that it's important to first understand as to what happened after she invited the person into the room. The topic then shifts to the golden replica sword. Naigi told the group that Sayaka suggested him to keep it for self-defense. The sword was likely used to break Sayaka's right wrist. Leon then asks as to how could he possibly know that. Naigi then presents a picture of Sayaka's right wrist. It is clearly swollen with gold coatings on it. We then head to another debate focusing on what happened in Naigi's room. We shoot down Yasuhiro's statement of it being a sword-based sneak attack. The fight didn't start off with the sword due to the sword's sheath being scratched. Naigi then explained to everyone that if the sword was used first, then there wouldn't be any scratches on the sheath. And if you were going to attack with the sword, you obviously have to take the sheath out, otherwise the sword would have been heavy and difficult to use. Kyoko and Naigi made it clear to the group that Sayaka didn't use the sword to defend herself from the kitchen knife. The palm of Sayaka's hands were perfectly clean. There were no signs of gold coatings from the replica sword. Taka then hastily formed the conclusion that the one who damaged the sheath with the kitchen knife was Sayaka. Naigi was shocked upon hearing this and both Kyoko and Byakuya doubled down on it. The pieces of this puzzle is starting to become clear. Sayaka was in possession of the knife and initiated the first attack. She wasn't a blameless victim in this. She planned to commit a murder of her own. Celeste then brought up the point where Sayaka was the one who suggested to switch rooms. She then states that Sayaka probably did this to pin the crime on Naigi. Upon hearing all of this, Naigi's world came crashing down like a loyal simp who found out that his number one idol was confirmed to be dating someone. I can't blame him though, even I felt betrayed by this. How could you, Sayaka? You used me all along? I only wrote good things about you in my script. See? I was even tempted to move you up to number 1 in the A tier. Is it because I have Kyoko as my number 1 waifu? I mean, it would take a lot to dethrone her, but still, how could you? SMH my head, Sayaka. Because of that, I'm moving you down to D tier, right where you belong. The group may have figured out that Sayaka had bad intentions, but they are still at a loss as to who killed Sayaka. Another non-stop debate starts, and Naigi remembers that there is one final clue to possibly solve this case. We shoot down Leon's claim of there aren't any more clues left. We then told everyone about Sayaka's dying message. 11037 was written in blood behind Sayaka's body. Celeste then asked the question if Sayaka herself really did write this. Naigi then brought up Sayaka's left index finger, which had blood on it. After clearing things up with the group, they were still confused at the vital clue that Sayaka left behind. Kyoko then brought up that it wasn't numbers, but letters. Hifumi then noticed that the number 11 didn't look like a number, but it looked like a singular letter. Chihiro thinks that it's the letter N due to the faint connection on it.
エノとも読めるね。
うわ珍しくまともなこと言ったな。
灰色の脳細胞が冴えておりますぞ。
だが最初の文字が N だとしてもだ N037 ではまだ意味が通らんぞ。
時計回りにひっくり返すのよ。
そうだ。
ここに書いてあるのは犯人の名前だったんだよ。
Now, some of you probably might have guessed as to who it is, but let me tell you a story in my playthrough, because I find it too funny to cut it out of the video. So, for context, my friend recommended me to play this game since he found a streamer who played it. He found the gameplay and story interesting, so he insisted me to play it. I eventually played it, and I was streaming my gameplay on Discord, because he wanted to hear my theories and see my reactions on the story. With all that said, here's how it went out. Rotate daw yung number.
Ano yan?
Saan i-rotate?
Rotate 180. Oo.
Paano mag-rotate ng 180?
Babalik, ano lang, i-upside down mo lang. Sorry, yung triangle, babalik rin mo lang. So, yung pointed side ng triangle, nakatapat na sa baba.
And yung simula, diba?
And
This right here was my first mistake. I accidentally wrote the numbers 11013. It was supposed to be 11037. Looking back at this footage, it was so painfully obvious as to who it is. But you have to understand that A, I got the numbers wrong, and B, I don't remember all of the characters' names. I mean, there are 15 characters in this game, and I only remembered 3 names at the time. One of the characters that I remember is Kyoko because reasons, Celeste because reasons as well, and Sayaka because, well, throughout the story, she spent a lot of time with us. She came to us when both Naigi and I had no one to talk to. When Naigi was having a rough time, she was there for us and comforted us. When she was breaking down in tears, we were there for her. She developed quite a lot as a character, despite having her screen time axed due to her sudden death. There's a part of me who thinks that she's a rotten bitch because she used us for her own personal gain. But regardless, I still liked her character, and I genuinely think that Sayaka may have regret her actions. Oh, and reasons of course. Laging Noel nakikita ko.
pwede ko ba sa'yo? Ako na sasagot. Di ba 360 complete circle, complete rotation? Ang 180 kalahati ng complete circle.
Ganto ba?
Hindi ko kita yan.
2,000 years later.
Si Leon ba?
Leon. Connected.
Alright, now that I've successfully deduced as to who did the crime, I pointed my cursor towards Leon Kawata. In case you guys missed it, if you turn this dying message around, it becomes the word Leon. Leon brushed the evidence off as some sort of a coincidence. Kyoko then pointed out that it wasn't a coincidence at all. Sayaka wrote the message on the wall behind her as she was leaning up against it. She couldn't write it normally due to her injury, so she had to write it upside down. Leon still denies such claims and told the group that it's one hell of a stretch. Kyoko asked Naegi to point out the evidence that Leon tried to get rid of. I then showed to everyone the burnt piece of cloth near the incinerator. The killer had to dispose the shirt covered in the victim's blood. Leon stood his ground and said that there are other people here with shirts like his. Naegi brought up as to how the shirt was disposed of. Leon then cuts him off and said, "You can't get into the incinerator without opening the gate in front of the trash room." Leon then aggressively accused that the killer had to be the one in charge of the trash room. We then head off to another heated argument. Leon was being really adamant of accusing another person in this debate. We shoot down his claim in regards to the incinerator. Naegi then states as to how someone could dispose of the evidence without using the trash room key. He then showed to the whole group the shattered glass ball that was near the incinerator. There was only one possible way to turn the incinerator on. The killer had to throw the glass ball through the gap in the gate to hit the switch. Once the incinerator was on, all they had to do was ball up the shirt and throw it through the gap and into the incinerator. Kyoko then brought up a great point. If the killer really was assigned to the trash room, then they would have taken care of the evidence much more thoroughly. Chihiro then brought up the distance of the gate to the incinerator to be at least 30 feet. Leon agreed to that statement and said that it's impossible to hit that throw. Naegi replied by saying that the throw is difficult for sure, but not impossible, because the killer is the ultimate baseball star. Upon hearing all of this, Leon continues to stand his ground and denies everything thrown at him. Kyoko grew tired of hearing all of his excuses and asked Naegi to sum it all up to make it clear on everyone. We've arrived at another minigame called the closing argument. It's basically a manga that I have to summarize and fill in the missing pages. Why is a manga missing its panels, and why do I have to fill in the missing pages? I have no idea, but who cares? It's honestly a really cool and fun minigame. With that said, here's how the case unfolds.
犯人は君なんだ。じゃあ最初から事件を振り返ってみるよ。昨日の夜、犯人は前園さんのいる部屋、つまり交換した僕の部屋に行ったんだ。
Ay, balik.
おそらく前園さんはその人物を殺すつもりで部屋に呼んだんだよ。そして彼女はあらかじめ用意していた厨房の包丁でその人物に襲いかかったんだ。そこで予期せぬ事態が起きた。その人物が僕の部屋に置いてあった模擬刀で反撃してきたんだ。その攻防の末、模擬刀の攻撃によって前園さんは右手首を骨折してしまって、そこで包丁を奪われてしまったんだ。追い詰められた前園さんは慌ててシャワールームに逃げ込んだ。犯人はすぐに後を追ったけど、なぜかシャワールームのドアは開かなかった。僕の部屋のシャワールームはドアの立て付けが悪くて、コツを知らないと開けることができなかったんだ。前園さんは僕が教えたから知ってたけど、もちろん犯人はそれを知らなかった。それでも犯人は何とかドアをこじ開け、そして奪った包丁で前園さんを刺したんだ。だけど前園さんは残った力でその場にダイイングメッセージを残した。犯人に気づかれないように自分の背中側の壁にね。だけどそこで彼女は力尽きてしまったんだ。前園さんを殺した後、犯人は慌てて証拠隠滅に取り掛かった。まず返り血のついたシャツを脱ぎ、そして僕の部屋にあったクリーナーで部屋中を徹底的に掃除した。 自分が部屋を訪れたという痕跡を消すために。その後犯人は脱いだワイシャツを処分するためにトラッシュルームへと向かった。そこにある焼却炉で返り血のついたワイシャツを燃やそうとしたんだよ。だけどトラッシュルームは鉄格子で封鎖されてて焼却炉に近づくことができなかった。そこで犯人が使ったのは葉隠君がランドリーに置き忘れていたガラス玉だったんだ。犯人は鉄格子の隙間からガラス玉を投げることで焼却炉のスイッチを入れたんだ。普通の人なら不可能に近い発想だけど、でも犯人にはそれを可能にする自信があった。犯人は超高校級の野球選手だったからなんだ。正確なコントロールで投げられたガラス玉は焼却炉のスイッチに当たり、そして焼却炉は稼働を始めた。こうして証拠を隠滅した犯人は安心し、すぐにトラッシュルームを後にした。だけどそこには誤算があったんだ。投げ込んだワイシャツの一部が焼却炉から焼け落ちてしまったんだよ。そしてそれが決定的な証拠となってしまうことに犯人は気づくことができなかった。そうだよね、桑田レオン君。
After theorizing the story and going through all the evidences, Kyoko asks Leon if he has any objections. And, of course, Leon objects everything. We now have one last minigame on our hands, the bullet time battle. It's basically a rhythm game. Yes, there's a rhythm game. And worst part is, you're required to beat it to progress through the story. And let me tell you a little secret I have with rhythm games. I suck at it. Well, looking back at the footage, I probably didn't read the tutorial properly. Anyways, after beating Leon one-on-one in a rhythm game, we then arrived at the conclusion that the evidence was a toolkit. The crime scene took place in Nagi's room. The killer had no idea that it was his room, and the killer also assumed that there were no toolkits in the room. The group then cornered Leon with all of this overwhelming information and evidence. And with that, Leon finally admitted his defeat. The group then took a vote as to who did the crime, and they all chose Leon as the culprit, which is deemed correct by Monokuma. Leon then attempted to plead for mercy, saying that he killed Sayaka for self-defense, stating that he was in a kill or be killed situation. Celeste saw through his lies and told Leon that he had a lot of opportunities to stop what he was doing. Leon went out of his way to go to his room, grab the toolkit, and go back to the room Sayaka was in. Nagi then cuts them off by saying that he's had enough of this. Both Leon and Sayaka isn't to blame. He then points his finger towards Monokuma and states that he's the one to blame for all of this. Monokuma then took control of the room and announced that it was time for Leon's punishment. Leon desperately pleads for his life one last time before being dragged into utter despair. In my opinion, this is one of the most brutal punishments in the Danganronpa series. Try to imagine yourself in Leon's shoes for a second. You're a high school kid who got accepted into a prestigious school because of your amazing talent in baseball. Upon entering the school, you decided to drop baseball for another passion that you wanted to pursue. You then get stuck in a life or death situation within the confines of the school. An evil mastermind took something or someone you love, and you want to find out what happened to them. After a series of events, you got yourself in a situation where you killed someone and the others found out that you did it. You suddenly got chained up and dragged across the room while you're desperately trying to free yourself. You then get publicly executed in the most brutal way possible. You were executed by 1,000 baseballs shot at you. You were killed by the talent that you were so exceptionally good at. So talented, in fact, that you decided to drop it altogether and decided to pursue another dream. Throughout this whole scene, you can clearly see Leon desperately screaming and crying for help. These students are just teenagers. They have so much to live for and yet they can't. They're stuck in this hellhole with no exit in sight. You can also see the rest of the group's reaction. They all looked traumatized at the sight of such gruesomeness. This punishment scene, along with the prologue and chapter 1 as a whole, cemented the series for me. And with that, ladies and gents, we have concluded the chapter 1 of the series. Oh wait, you think it's over? Nah, we still have 5 more chapters to go alongside with 2 more main series titles. I still haven't scratched the surface when it comes to the lore of this game. Originally, I was planning to cram the entire Trigger Happy Havoc series into this one video, but I figured that it would take too long to script out and edit the video. Also, let me know if you like this style of video format where I narrate the story and tell you some of the experiences I've had with certain parts. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. I really appreciate it if you guys are still here and stuck with the video from start to finish. I'm really glad that this series is my first ever visual novel experience. The Danganronpa series is such a fantastic game with great story, wonderful cast of characters, world building, and music direction. I can't wait to take a look at other visual novels that are out there once I've finished the Danganronpa series. Remember to leave a like on this video if you did enjoy it, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button as well. I wish you guys a happy holiday, and I'll see you guys on the next one.